Okay, let's unpack this. Close your eyes for a second and picture that perfect mango. You know, the one vibrant gold, heavy in your hand, dripping with sweet, sticky juice as you bite into it. It's pure sunshine, often called the king of fruits.
And it's an image deeply connected to places like India, specifically the state of Karnataka, um, a massive mango-growing region. But right now, in 2025, that idyllic picture couldn't be further from the stark, heartbreaking reality facing farmers there.
It's a crisis, yeah. Instead of bumper harvest bringing prosperity, we're seeing tons and tons of this beautiful fruit left to rot by the roadside. Prices have absolutely plummeted, leaving farmers facing not just a bad year, but, well, outright financial ruin.
It's a devastating situation. And our mission in this deep dive is to, cut through the noise, look at the information from the ground, and understand the complex web of factors that have converged to create this bitter harvest. What exactly happened, and what does it mean for the people whose lives depend on this crop?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because this isn't some small, isolated incident. Karnataka is a giant in the mango world. We're talking about a state that dedicates a massive 1.39 lakh hectares to mango cultivation.
And just to give you a sense of scale, that's 139,000 hectares, roughly the size of Los Angeles. In a typical good year, that land yields a staggering 11 lakh tons of mangoes. That's 1.1 million tons of fruit.
A staggering amount. And within Karnataka, there's one area that truly is the epicenter, Kolar district. And the town of Srinivasapura within Kolar, it's proudly known as the mango capital of the world.
For good reason. The sheer volume of mangoes that come out of there is immense. But this year, the headlines coming out of Srinivasapura aren't about bountiful harvests. They're about despair. Reports are detailing financial ruin, a complete collapse of the system that's meant to get these mangoes from the tree to market. It's a true, perfect storm of problems.
And perhaps the most immediate and painful sign of this storm is the price crash. The numbers are frankly, well, astonishing. We've been looking at reports showing that last year, a ton of mangoes could sell for around Rs at 12,000.
And this year, for that exact same ton, farmers are being offered a mere Rs 4,000. Now, here's the gut punch. It costs these farmers, on average, around Rs 12,000 just to grow that ton of mangoes.
Wait, so they are spending Rs 12,000 to produce the fruit and selling it for only Rs 4,000?
Precisely. They are losing Rs 8,000 on every single ton they manage to harvest and attempt to sell. It's like, imagine baking a gourmet cake that cost you $50 in ingredients, labor, and electricity, and then being forced to sell it for $15. You're not just making less profit, you are actively bleeding money on every single transaction.
It's unsustainable, yeah. And to make matters worse, the mango season this year extended late, pushing into June end. By the time the Karnataka fruit is ready and still trying to find buyers, the market is already flooded with mangoes from North India. This timing issue makes the Karnataka fruit less competitive, adding another layer of difficulty to selling it, even at these rock-bottom prices.
Absolutely. It's a terrible confluence of oversupply and falling demand. But a major piece of the puzzle, especially for Karnataka, isn't just about the mangoes eaten fresh. It's about the vast majority of the crop destined for processing.
Right. Because while about 4 lakh tons, that's 400,000 tons, are consumed fresh, a massive 7 lakh tons, that's 700,000 tons, are grown specifically for factories. This fruit, particularly the Totapuri variety, is pulped and used in juices, jams, pickles, and other processed products.
And here's one of the biggest choke points in 2025. The factories that buy this processing fruit simply aren't buying. They are essentially, closed for business for new stock.
But why? Is there no demand for mango juice anymore, or?
Well, the problem isn't a lack of eventual demand, but a massive overstock of pulp already in warehouses. See, pulp has a shelf life of up to 2 years. Factories stocked up heavily last year, and they still have enormous quantities sitting, waiting to be sold or processed further.
So they don't need fresh mangoes because they're still working through last year's inventory.
Wow. Exactly. It's like they already cooked a massive feast last year, and they're still trying to eat the leftovers. They have no incentive, or frankly physical space, to buy new ingredients when their warehouses are packed. And this exposes a major vulnerability for Karnataka. Its own processing infrastructure is incredibly underdeveloped.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, there are only 11 pulp industries in the entire state, and incredibly, only 3 of those are fully operational right now. This means Karnataka is heavily reliant on processors outside the state to buy and pulp their fruit.
And you've contrasted this with a neighboring state, Andhra Pradesh.
Yes, exactly. Look at Andhra Pradesh.
Oh,
They've strategically developed an agri-economic zone specifically for this kind of processing. They boast modern facilities and, critically, they offer single-window clearances for setting up new factories. If you want to invest in food processing there, they make it relatively straightforward.
and in Karnataka, not so easy.
It's described as a bureaucratic nightmare. We've heard firsthand accounts describing the process of trying to get permits for a new processing unit as running between government departments like a headless chicken. This red tape actively discourages investment in the very infrastructure Karnataka desperately needs to handle its own fruit.
Okay, so you've got this huge volume of mangoes meant for processing, minimal functional capacity within the state, and the main buyers are full up on last year's stock. But then things took another turn for the worse when a major external market actually closed its doors.
That's right. Andhra Pradesh, which has traditionally been a major destination for Karnataka's Totapuri mangoes, for processing taking something like 3 lakh tons, that's 300,000 tons, that would normally go there, and to Tamil Nadu, well, they implemented a ban.
A ban on importing mangoes from a neighboring state. That seems, well, pretty aggressive. What was the justification?
The official reason given by the Chittor district collector in Andhra Pradesh was to protect their own farmers. You see, Andhra farmers are also facing low prices for their produce, and the ban was presented as a measure to reduce the influx of fruit from Karnataka, thereby theoretically helping Andhra's own mango growers get better prices.
But for Karnataka, especially those districts right on the border like Kolar, which sends significant volumes south for processing, this ban must have been a devastating blow.
Absolutely devastating. We know Karnataka's chief secretary sent a strongly worded letter to Andhra Pradesh arguing that this ban was causing significant distress, particularly in those border areas.
Did they try talking to them directly?
Yes, a team from Kolar district even traveled to Chittor to plead their case directly to the officials there. They explained the dire situation facing their farmers and the dependency on the Andhra processing market.
And what was the response? Did they listen?
The Andhra officials held firm. They basically reiterated their focus on supporting their own farmers first. And even the processing units in Andhra that were not completely full were offering abysmal prices, reportedly as low as Rs 4 per kilogram.
4 rupees a kilogram, when the growing cost is around Rs 12 a kilogram? I mean, Rs 12,000 per ton.
Exactly. For many Karnataka farmers, Rs 4 per kilogram barely covers the cost of transporting the fruit all the way to Chittor. We've heard these heartbreaking stories of farmers driving their truckloads down, being offered that price, and realizing it's less than the fuel they burned to get there.
Oh, that's awful.
The only rational, albeit heartbreaking choice was to leave the fruit, just dump it, and drive back empty-handed. There was simply nowhere viable left to sell.
So you've got farmers losing money on the farm, minimal local processing, key external processors full, and now a major neighboring state banning your fruit. I feel like everything that could go wrong has. But you mentioned global events are also playing a cruel hand here.
They absolutely are. India is an absolute powerhouse in global mango production. We contribute nearly half of the world's total output, which in 2024 was around 25 million tons. And the Middle East is a significant market for processed Indian mango pulp.
Okay. But we're seeing reports that ongoing geopolitical conflicts, particularly the instability in the Gaza region, are severely disrupting traditional shipping routes. How does that fit in?
Well, that's right. The Suez Canal, a key pathway for shipping from India to the Middle East and Europe, is impacted. Vessels are having to take much longer routes, often around the Cape of Good Hope. These alternative routes are significantly longer, add weeks to transit times, and dramatically increase shipping costs due to higher fuel consumption and insurance.
So trying to sell mango pulp abroad becomes vastly more expensive and complicated. Just getting it there costs a fortune.
It's like trying to sell a highly perishable product like a mango smoothie in a complicated, distant location that's become very difficult and costly to reach. Demand might still exist somewhere, but the logistics and cost of getting it there have become prohibitive for many buyers. This global slowdown, exacerbated by geopolitical issues and a general economic downturn, means less demand for exported pulp.
And the numbers bear that out, don't they? We've seen an estimate that around 2.74 lakh tons, that's 274,000 tons of mango pulp, globally remain unexported in 2025 because of these very issues.
And a substantial portion of that, reportedly 1.5 lakh tons, 150,000 tons, is just sitting in warehouses. This feeds back directly into the local problem. pulp factories, seeing this global overstock and slow demand, have even less incentive to buy fresh mangoes from farmers, further exacerbating the domestic price crash and oversupply.
So we've got a collapsed domestic market, compounded by dysfunctional local infrastructure, choked off by a neighboring ban, and hammered by collapsing global demand due to conflict and economic slowdown. It truly is being hit from every single angle.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, the weather decided to join the party.
Yes, Mother Nature added her own devastating twists. The 2025 mango season in Karnataka started rough. We saw delayed flowering, then scorching heat during crucial development stages, followed by an unusually early monsoon. This combination severely impacted yields from the get-go.
So even the mangoes that were growing faced challenges right from the start.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the early season. We also had unseasonal heavy rains in April 2025 that directly damaged the standing crops just as they were maturing. And this isn't a one-off. We saw extreme heat shrinking yields significantly in 2024 and back in 2022. Excessive rainfall in Chittor disrupted flowering, showing just how sensitive mangoes are to climate volatility.
So the weather is making the crop inconsistent and vulnerable right when the market is weakest. It really does feel like being hit from all sides: weather, prices, and now this ban. Just as one farmer described their situation, it's just relentless.
When you put all these factors together, the human impact becomes heartbreakingly visible. The images coming out of Srinivasapura of farmers dumping tons of perfectly good mangoes by the roadside, it's a gut-wrenching sight. It's the physical manifestation of their economic ruin, the fruit of their labor, literally being discarded because it's worth less than the cost of getting it to market.
And this despair has boiled over into organized action, hasn't it? The Srinivasapura Mango Growers Association called for a full-blown ban to shut down of services in June 2025 to protest. Farmers were on the streets demanding urgent intervention.
That's right. Their key demand is a minimum support price, an MSP, for mangoes, similar to what is provided for some other crops, to guarantee a baseline price and protect them from these extreme crashes. They're also openly accusing processing factories of organized exploitation, using the crisis to offer deliberately unfair prices.
And this isn't the first time they've faced something like this, although you said the situation is far worse now. We recall a similar price crash and dumping back in 2021, exacerbated by a fungal attack.
That's true. But even then, prices dropped from a range of, say, Rs 2025 per kilogram down to maybe Rs 5. This year, they're struggling to even get Rs 3 or Rs 4 per kilogram. The depth of the crisis is just unprecedented.
Yeah.
And the personal stories emerging are truly devastating. We've read accounts of farmers who are seriously considering selling their entire orchards land that's been in their families for generations because they simply cannot afford to pay their workers. One farmer articulated the crushing feeling of having lost everything from bloom to market, every stage of effort yielding only loss.
And that farmer you mentioned earlier who drove his mangoes all the way to Chittor, just imaging the hope and effort invested in that journey, only to be offered a price that didn't even cover his fuel. Being forced to simply abandon his crop and drive back with an empty truck and empty pockets, the despair must be immense.
It's not just the orchard owners either. The ripple effect hits the entire local economy. Srinivasapura has a bustling market that relies on processing and handling the fruit. With farmers not selling, the seasonal workers who depend on sorting, packing, and transporting those mangoes are finding there is simply no work at all. We've seen reports of complete lack of employment for these crucial members of the community.
So with all this pressure building, are we seeing any concrete steps, any potential paths forward being discussed or explored to alleviate this crisis and maybe prevent future ones?
There is certainly pressure, and officials in Kolar have made promises of help. There's also significant political pressure mounting on the Karnataka state government to finally introduce a minimum support price for mangoes. The demand is often cited as Rs 12,000 per ton, essentially matching the average cost of production to provide farmers with a safety net.
Which would mirror what Andhra Pradesh has done for their own farmers, right? Providing them a guaranteed baseline.
Exactly. It would give them some stability.
And what about the situation in Chittor regarding the ban? Any movement there?
Well, the Chittor collector did reportedly hold meetings aiming to facilitate procurement of Karnataka totapuri at a better price, perhaps targeting Rs 12 per kilogram. However, the deep skepticism from farmers remains. They've experienced being promised a decent price over the phone, say, Rs 8 per kilogram, only to be offered half of that, Rs 4, once their fruit actually arrives at the factory gate. Trust is understandably very low.
Okay, so there are talks and promises, maybe some slight movement, but what about the more fundamental systemic issues we've identified? What solutions are being discussed to address those?
A major long-term solution being widely discussed is the urgent need for Karnataka to invest heavily in building its own pulp processing infrastructure. This would mean more factories within the state to reduce reliance on external buyers like Andhra. Crucially, this needs to be paired with drastically simplifying the permit process, implementing that single-window system, like Andhra's, to attract the necessary private investment.
That seems essential to process that 7 lakh tons that typically leaves the state. It has to be dealt with locally.
Absolutely. Establishing that minimum support price in Karnataka is also seen as vital for ensuring fair prices and protecting farmers from market manipulation in these devastating crashes. It gives them a floor below which prices cannot fall.
And looking beyond domestic processing and prices, what about exports?
Experts are suggesting the need to actively find and cultivate new export markets, particularly in regions like Asia or Africa, to diversify away from the currently disrupted Middle East. Exploring cheaper sea routes for transporting pulp where feasible is also key to making exports competitive again.
What about empowering the farmers themselves? Is there anything they can do collectively?
Forming stronger farmer cooperatives is consistently highlighted as a way for them to gain collective bargaining power. Instead of individual farmers negotiating from a position of weakness with large factories, a cooperative can negotiate for better prices and terms on behalf of many growers. Gives them more clout.
Makes sense. And finally, addressing the vulnerability to weather, because that seems like a recurring theme.
Yes, horticulture scientists are stressing the importance of adopting climate-resilient farming methods. This includes practices like using organic fertilizers to improve soil health and moisture retention, and implementing modern, efficient irrigation techniques to cope with erratic rainfall and heat waves. These methods can help improve yields and quality, making the crop more robust and competitive even in challenging conditions.
These sound like practical, necessary steps. But is there a sense that they are being implemented with the urgency the crisis demands, or is it slow going?
That's where the frustration really lies. The feeling on the ground among the farmers and those affected is that the wheels of government and industry are turning incredibly slowly. As one farmer described it with weary humor, the government moves slower than a mango ripening in the shade. There's a desperate need for swifter action to address both the immediate devastation and the underlying issues that caused it.
This deep dive has really pulled back the curtain on the incredible complexity behind something as seemingly simple as a mango. It's not just about a piece of fruit. It's about a vast, interconnected system of farming, processing, markets, policy, and even global events.
It really is. And what's happening in Karnataka is a stark reminder that this system is fragile. It's about the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of people, entire communities built around this one crop, and the future viability of agriculture in a crucial region.
And it underscores that solving this isn't just the job of one group. The government needs to create the right environment with infrastructure and fair policies. The processing industry needs to operate ethically and invest domestically. And yes, maybe even we as consumers have a role to play.
Definitely. Initiatives like promoting Buy Karnataka mangoes locally,
Right.
or even organizing large-scale mango festivals could help boost direct consumption and create alternative avenues for farmers when the industrial market fails like this.
It gives you a lot to think about. The next time you enjoy a mango, whether it's the fresh fruit, a glass of juice, a dollop of jam, or a spicy pickle, take a moment to consider the incredibly complex, often difficult journey it took to get to your table.
And remember, the farmers in places like Srinivasapura, they are cultivating more than just trees and fruit. They are nurturing dreams for their families, for their future. And right now, under the weight of this perfect storm of challenges, those dreams are facing a harsh, bitter reality. It's a powerful reminder of the unseen human effort and vulnerability behind the food we rely on every day.